Well, welcome to my series, viewers, entitled Who is Ruling Australia? A behavioural political analysis. I'd like to think it's more of a therapy journey for people that are struggling to come to terms with what's happening in the country now. In this episode, I have entitled it, When Australians Started Realising Freedom Without Courage Becomes Decoration. In the last episode, I examined internal fear becoming a form of governance before formal suppression was required. In this episode, I advance the constitutional consequence further, freedom remaining publicly celebrated while courage disappears from the citizen capable of exercising it. And at first, freedom still appeared intact. The words remained, the ceremonies remained, the slogans remained. The institutional language still honoured rights, democracy, fairness, inclusion and public confidence. And Australians could still point to legal forms and assume liberty was alive. Then slowly, another recognition began surfacing beneath the constitutional fatigue. Freedom can remain visible while becoming unstable. And that distinction matters enormously because liberty does not survive merely by existing in documents, speeches, policies, or public ceremonies. Freedom requires citizens with courage enough to exercise conscience beneath pressure. In Australia's constitutional Christian heritage, assumed liberty was never meant to float detached from moral formation. Freedom required truth, truth required conscience, conscience required courage, and courage required higher authority than institutional approval. But once divine sovereign restraint weakens, establishments increasingly convert freedom into ceremonial language while conditioning citizens into practical caution. And the right remains described. The citizen becomes afraid to use it. And that is constitutional decoration. And the paradox deepens further. Institutions continue speaking rights, protection, inclusion, participation, and democratic values, while populations increasingly learn to soften conviction, avoid visible conscience, distrust moral clarity, negotiate against truth, and treat lawful speech as a reputational hazard. And this is where freedom becomes psychologically hollow, not abolished, decorated. The establishment does not need to prove every protection when citizens no longer possess the internal courage to stand inside the protections they inherited. And that's why the crisis is spiritual before it is procedural. A people severed from God gradually lose the courage to stand before man. And a society detached from truth eventually fears offence more than falsehood. A citizen disconnected from divine authority becomes easier to intimidate through institutional language, social risk, and administrative consequence. And the lawful defence is therefore not rage. It is recovered courage beneath restraint. Truth precedes approval. Conscience precedes bureaucracy. God stands above government. Dignity precedes permission. And freedom exists for responsible truth, not comfortable silence. And the issue confronting Australia is no longer simply whether freedoms remain written. The issue confronting Australia is much deeper. It's whether citizens remain morally formed enough to bear the cost of exercising them. Because rights without courage become ceremonial inheritance. Conscience without speech becomes private grief. And freedom without truth becomes institutional theatre. And constitutional order without divine restraint becomes vulnerable to establishments that celebrate liberty while cultivating fear of its actual use. So I'd ask you to listen very carefully to my closing statement, please, viewers. And somewhere beneath the decorated freedom, another truth steadily emerges. A civilization begins losing liberty when its people still possess rights on paper, but no longer carry the courage, conscience, and divine restraint required to exercise them before power. I'm Dr. J.W.A., theologist since 1994. Like and subscribe to encourage me to do more. Comment to educate me and share the video to help somebody else. I'll see you in the next subject on this, entitled When Australians Started Realising Courage Had to Become Lawful Again.